Taylor Swift is a link builder. There were rumours that she would get engaged. Our client said, let's give them a free wedding venue. And then we got them 50 links. That's digital PR.
Managing multiple clients or large websites? Automate your SEO with Ali AI. Start your free trial now.
Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
I did pitch a 20-minute talk on my dog, but Calvin said no, so sorry about that. Hi everyone, I'm Paddy Moogan. I'm the founder of The New Leader. Today we're going to talk about why most managers are destined to fail, but most importantly, how to avoid being one of them. As Tasmin said, I have run my own agency for the last 10 years or so. Sometimes it feels a bit more like this. When I started it, firstly I had hair and this wasn't as grey as it is now, so it's been a long 10 years or so. But today I try and focus on helping people become more effective managers and leaders. And over the last 10 years of running an agency, I've really found that's where I get a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, like satisfaction, seeing people progress in their careers, and ultimately helping people enjoy their jobs and enjoy their careers. We spend 5 days out of 7 working. If you don't enjoy it, it's not the nicest way to live. So I try and help people really enjoy their careers, enjoy their jobs and progress and have really good careers in the long term. And unfortunately, one of the reasons that I've chosen to focus on an area of management and leadership is because most of us as managers are actually destined to fail. As Miracle mentioned earlier, 60% of managers fail within the first 2 years or so. And so what I try and do now is help managers become more effective and plug that gap in training that a lot of us have. And there's 3 core reasons why we fail as managers. I'm going to talk through it one by one. The first one, I think, is particularly prevalent in our industry, in digital marketing, in agencies, in in-house brands and places like that. But I think it's also true across multiple industries. And that's that career progression is actually a little bit broken. And I'm going to walk over this side for a second. And part of the reason for that is because when you start your career, if you come out of university, you come out of college or start an apprenticeship, you start as a junior, entry level, start to learn the ropes, get involved in the company, that kind of stuff. Eventually you work your way up and you maybe become mid-level, promotion or two happens, you get more experience, you get more accountability, responsibility, it all starts to grow. You move on to a mid-level, you keep doing that, growing, learning more stuff. Eventually you become a senior. You know the job really well at this point. Maybe if you work at an agency, you manage 4 or 5 of your own clients. You're clearly very good at SEO, content, digital PR, PPC, whatever it is you're focused on, and you're doing really, really well. You then reach that level and you ask your manager, well, what's next? I'm doing really well, I'm progressing, I've got a few promotions, maybe you've moved across different companies, got lots of different experience, and then you're kind of like, okay, well, where do I go from here? Most of us get the answer back, which is, well, do you want to manage a team? And depending on the kind of agency or company you work at, that could be a really positive thing where it's like, great, that's a good step for you. Some is not so positive where it's kind of like, well, it's the only way to go. So we kind of say, well, yeah, okay, sounds good. And the reason that we do that is because at most companies, it's the only way to progress. It's the only way to get promoted. It's the only way to earn more money. So of course, we're like, well, whether you want to do it or not, we're going to say yes to it because we want progression and we want to be promoted. So you end up with most companies, most agencies, most brands, across most industries, taking this kind of a path where you work your way out from junior to senior, and then the only path available to you is to become a team manager. Now, the problem is, even if you really want to be a people manager and you really want to be a team manager, this is still a really big step to take, moving from that senior kind of individual contributor, senior SEO, PR, whatever it is that you do, to then managing a team of people doing that thing. It's a big, big step up for most of us. But we do it anyway, because again, if we don't, we'll probably hit a bit of a ceiling in terms of salary, growth, progression. So we feel like most of the time, it's the only way we can actually progress. Now, some companies, I actually count my own last agency in this bracket as well, are a bit more progressive. So it's not the only way to progress at some companies. Some companies offer 2 tracks, where it's management. Yes, you can become a team manager, manage people, that kind of stuff. Or you can become what's often known as an individual contributor, where maybe there's a path open to you where you say, look, I just want to be really, really good at SEO. really, really good at digital PR, good at content, whatever it is, and I just want to do that day in, day out. I don't want to manage people. I just want to be really, really good at this one thing. So some companies do offer that kind of a track as well. And again, this is something my old agency did. The problem is that I can speak from experience here. Most companies will still struggle with this kind of a path and actually implementing that path because it's a little bit messy. So for example, if you've been doing SEO for a long time and you go along this individual contributor route, you could end up doing it for so long that your manager is actually less experienced than you. So they've been doing it for maybe a couple of years, you've been doing it for maybe 5 or 10. Maybe you earn more money than them because you're technically more senior. So you've got a manager who is less experienced than you, more junior, could earn less money than you, doing your power reviews, doing your progression. It's a bit messy and a little bit difficult to navigate. So even companies that are a bit more progressive and offer 2 tracks for managers, so you don't have to go into that route if you don't want to, it's still a bit difficult to actually make it work in the long term. But most companies, this is the path that you'll tend to take. And what tends to happen is what got you to this point as a senior SEO, PPC, digital PR, etc., all those skills, that experience you've accumulated that got you to that point and made you successful doesn't mean you're going to be successful as a team manager. What got you to this point won't get you to that point in terms of success. You can carry the skills forward, of course, but it doesn't mean that because you're the best SEO in the world, you're going to be the best manager in the world. They're very different skill sets. And there's other reasons as well why managers are likely to fail. So the second major one is a chronic severe. I sell training to this now, so I'm not a bit biased, but so many of us don't get training on how to be a manager. I did a session here yesterday for a group of 4 people and gave some management training. All 4 people in the room had 0 training at all previously on how to be an effective manager, and they're all currently managers. And so that was 100% of that room, including myself, that have had no training on how to be a manager. It's actually true across the whole of the UK as well, across every industry. 82% of managers aren't given any formal training whatsoever on how to be an effective manager before they're given the job. So actually, it's seen as a nice to have. It's seen as a soft skill, something that's actually like, well, people just figure it out. But it's actually crazy to think that you give someone such an important role and you don't give them the training to go alongside it, despite the huge step up in responsibility that you then take when you move from being a great individual contributor to then managing a team of those people as well. So essentially, you're given a job that you're just not trained for. And when we think about that, that's crazy. If you were an SEO and you get given an SEO role and you're not given any training whatsoever on how to be an SEO, that's clearly setting that person up to fail. Yet we do it pretty much all the time, 82% of the time when it comes to managers. And that job, being a manager, it doesn't just affect you as an individual if you do it badly. When you're a manager, if you're a bad manager, it affects all of the people you manage as well. And the consequences of that lack of training can be quite severe because it multiplies across all of those people that you are now managing. So if this is you here in the middle and you've got a team of 4 people around you, you are directly influencing the careers of those 4 people. Those 4 people rely upon you for progressions, for their promotions, their pay rises. So if you're not very good at being a manager, the impact on their careers can be very, very severe and very consequential. But your influence goes beyond just those people's careers and their day-to-day kind of progression, salaries, promotions, that kind of thing as well. So we go back to this idea that if you're managing 4 people, each of those 4 people have their own projects. If you work at an agency, they all have maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 clients that they all manage individually as well. So all of a sudden, you also play a part, not just in the success or failure of their careers, but the success or failure of the projects and clients that they work on as well. Because if they've got a problem with a client, well, they're naturally going to bring that to you. They're going to want your support and your help in how to overcome those challenges and those problems. And the third main reason that most of us fail in terms of management is we still have to do our old jobs. Now, I can say this now, kind of having run an agency for 10 years and spoken to lots of agency owners and founders and seen lots in the last 10 years or so, the vast majority of the time, when you become a manager, that's still not your only job. You've still got to do your old job as well. So when you're at this level as a senior SEO, PPC, etc., you're managing clients, you're doing day-to-day stuff. When you become a manager, you still have to do that job. So if we go back to this idea again, where you're in the middle, you're managing 4 people and all of their projects as well, well, you still have your own. It isn't a magic bullet that comes along and says, okay, cool, you've got a team, now you don't have any projects or clients to work on. That can happen over time, but chances are in the first few months at least, of managing a team, you've still got to manage your own clients. They don't magically disappear just because you go from being a senior consultant to being a team manager. That's not, unfortunately, how agencies work. That model just doesn't work for most of them. So you end up in a position where you're at the centre of a team, managing 3 or 4 people, helping to influence and manage their clients and their problems as well, while still managing your own. And that's a very, very difficult balance to strike. But when you strike that balance, it can really make a big difference between being a good manager and being a great manager. And balancing your own client work with being a great manager is really, really difficult. If you can do it, if you've got a fantastic team in front of you, it can be a lot easier. But fundamentally, you have to balance your own work, which again doesn't disappear, with your new job of being an effective manager, which is difficult on its own, let alone when you're still trying to manage your own clients and your own projects. So I got you to this point here as an individual contributor, as someone who's a great SEO, digital PR, etc., being really, really good at managing clients, managing projects, and working your way up to senior and doing really, really well. All of that stuff in that experience was very, very valuable. Is not going to get you to this point. It's not going to make you successful at continuing to manage your own projects and continuing to manage the careers of 3 or 4 people or even more around you and all of their projects and clients as well. So we're going to talk about how to actually bridge that gap and how to actually get there. Now, again, all managers need training. All of us need that. But I think there's a better way of breaking it down where we can think about it more as knowledge. Because when we think of training, it's a bit intangible, can mean a bunch of different things. We need to actually make it a bit more actionable and concrete in terms of how we approach that training. So I'm going to talk about a concept that's from a book called First Break All the Rules, about there being 2 types of knowledge that we need to embrace and use in our careers. So if what I'm going to share in a few slides particularly resonates, you're probably going to enjoy this book as well, which obviously goes into a lot more detail about how this works. So the first type of knowledge is what's called factual knowledge. This is something we need to develop. And this is essentially things like this. So when you read books, attend courses, come to conferences, watch videos, listen to podcasts, all those kind of things you can sit down and actually do and absorb and supply yourself, that all falls within the category of factual knowledge. So in the context of being a manager, if you want to learn how to run effective one-on-one meetings, create personal development plans, onboarding new starters, you can do all of those things by reading blog posts, watching videos, listening to podcasts, reading books. All of those things you can learn about by just applying yourself and trying to seek out content you can read, listen to and watch. But factual knowledge doesn't guarantee excellence. You can read every book in the world on how to be a great manager. It doesn't mean you're going to be a great manager. However, you still need that foundational knowledge in order to stand a chance of being excellent. You can't kind of skip the basics or skip the foundational knowledge of how to be a great manager. You just won't be excellent if you try to skip the basics. But you can get to a level. You can get to a competent level very quickly, just by taking on board factual knowledge, by reading books, attending courses, watching videos. And this is kind of it's a weird one. It's a good thing and a bad thing, because it's a reflection of the fact that most managers don't get any training whatsoever, but also the fact that if you apply yourself, you're going to be better than most of those managers, because they don't get any training. They don't get this from their teams. They don't get this from their companies. So if you were to apply this thinking and actually apply yourself to this kind of knowledge, you can get pretty far and get pretty competent pretty quickly just by doing this. And again, it's kind of sad in some ways. It's a reflection of the lack of training that our industry has, but you can get there very quickly just by applying yourself to this level of knowledge. The second type of knowledge is what we call experiential knowledge. It's about experiences. So we develop this knowledge through things like receiving and giving feedback, by being part of conversations, being in meetings, being in difficult meetings, solving problems, working on challenges. It's stuff that we do day in, day out. So again, in the context of being a manager, this is how we develop things like being empathetic, active listening, and emotional intelligence, these kinds of things. By all means, you can read books about all of these things, but how you really develop those skills and this knowledge is by doing and developing your experience. And that experiential knowledge is essentially what you pick up along the way. It's things that you do in the course of your job, day in, day out, again, through meetings, experiences, it's all those kinds of things. One of my favourite examples here, and this is one for anyone in the room that works at an agency, but also if you work in-house, you'll understand this as well. Say if you're in a client meeting, and say it's a 12-month review, and you're looking back over the last 12 months or so, and you're looking at all the metrics and the targets, and you've smashed everything, doing really, really good, that all the charts going up and to the right, the client should be really happy. And they're saying they are, but you've just got this little niggle, you've got this little, I'm not quite sure, I feel like I'm not saying something, they're not really telling me everything here, but outwardly they're like, yeah, we're fine, this is all good, looks happy. And you kind of leave the meeting thinking, we're doing a good job, but something isn't quite right there. Then 2 weeks later, they email you, giving their notice, they're off to another agency. And you're like, I knew it, I knew there was something up. That experience, that intuition, that feeling you had in that meeting only comes through experience. You can't read how to pick up on those kind of telltale signs that someone isn't happy. You only get that experience through being in lots and lots of meetings, lots of situations, like that one that you find yourself in, where you got that feeling. But it takes longer to develop experiential knowledge. You can't just, again, read about how to develop this. It takes time. If we plot it on a graph over time and put it against factual knowledge, with factual knowledge where you're reading books and going to webinars, conferences, that kind of stuff, that tends to peak very, very quickly, because when you start learning a new skill, taking on board a new topic or starting a new job, of course you throw yourself into it, you learn very, very quickly. So that spike of knowledge goes up very fast. Then as you become more senior, it does plateau a little bit. It will still continue to grow, but naturally as you become more senior, there's less to learn. There's less that you can actually read and learn about online or through videos compared with experiential knowledge, which starts off a lot slower. The reason it starts off a lot slower is because when you're new into a role, you're quite junior, of course, you're not going to get thrown into really difficult situations from day one. You're not going to get told, here's a bunch of clients, start hitting them from day one, when you don't have any knowledge or experience of the role whatsoever. But then over time, that knowledge, that experience will start to grow, and then grows very, very quickly once you develop trust, once you get some confidence, and actually, in my opinion, becomes more powerful and more valuable to you than factual knowledge, because that's the kind of stuff that you pick up as you go along. It's a combination of both of these that really matters. So why is this important? Why do you need to think about this? Well, you need to be very, very deliberate about developing these two types of knowledge. So factual, experiential knowledge side by side, you need both of these. You can't just think of one or the other. And again, you need to be deliberate about trying to get both of these under your belt and trying to develop them. If you just focus on factual knowledge, you'll be good at your job. By all means, you can read all the books, take all the courses, go to all the conferences in the world. You'll be good. You want to be really fucking great. This is what you need as well. You need a combination of both of them. So how do we actually do that? So first, I'm going to give you a load of cheat sheets, templates, processes. So by all means, take photos and make notes, but you can download all of this at the end as well. So firstly, factual knowledge. So again, this is about hands-on learning, content, that kind of stuff. Being really, really honest. And again, I teach a lot of this stuff. There's dozens of topics, dozens of areas you can learn about to be an effective manager. If I'm being really, really honest, if you master these four and nothing else, it's probably going to get you 90% of the way there. Most of the issues, most of the challenges you come up against day in day in your job will fall into one of these four areas as a manager. There's lots of other stuff you can learn about, managing remote teams, emotional intelligence. There's loads of great stuff to learn about. These four are the ones that truly, truly matter. So if you get good at these, you'll be far more effective, fortunately, unfortunately, than most other managers. So when it comes to one-on-one meetings, you can download this at the end. This is a checklist for how you can run a weekly or bi-weekly one-on-one with your team. This is an agenda that you can go through that checks on their workload, checks on their calendar, checks on any blockers they've got that's going to stop them doing their day-to-day job. If you're not doing one-to-one with your team at the moment, either weekly or bi-weekly to check in on how they're doing day-to-day, if you start using this, I almost guarantee this will make a massive difference to your team day in, day out, just by following these 3 agenda points, checking in with them every single week, every 2 weeks. This will make a huge difference to your team. Also, you can download this afterwards as well. These are topics that you can fit into one-to-ones. So sometimes when you're a new manager or an experienced manager, you don't necessarily know what to talk about. You don't necessarily know what kind of topics to drill into. Whereas this covers pretty much everything you need to know about your team, from productivity to career progression, their current role, feedback on the company and team. All of these will give you lots of topics to talk about in your next one-to-one. Personal development plans. I'm discovering more and more people just don't have these in their roles, which again blows my mind, but a lot of people don't have them or don't do them for their teams. Here's some templates you can download and use on how to actually set objectives and goals for your team, and how to take very big, very intangible goals that your team want to achieve and break them down into smaller steps and put timelines against them and put objectives against them. You can use these to actually help drive personal development plans for your team. Giving and receiving feedback. If you get good at this, if you are really good at giving feedback, most of the problems will start to figure themselves out over time. I can't underemphasize how important being able to give feedback is as a manager. So again, there's a principles cheat sheet you can download at the end here around how to approach giving feedback. So things around authenticity, criticising in private, not in public, that kind of stuff. Listening, being timely with feedback. If you just take on board a couple of these, when you start to give feedback to your team, you'll discover how to give more effective feedback to your team, and it will make your feedback far, far more effective. And finally, difficult conversations. None of us like difficult conversations. All of us kind of tend to shy away from it a little bit. But as managers, it's really important we have hard conversations when we need to. So here's an approach on actually how to structure a really difficult conversation through to setting the context, how to outline the facts of the conversation, how to ask people how they're doing during the conversation, how to record it, how to list improvements. If you're facing a difficult conversation with someone, step by step, this will help you structure that whole conversation that you can have with them and make that conversation much more effective. Importantly, it gets that conversation out of your head where it's a bit messy and a bit difficult and quite stressful onto a piece of paper, onto a Google Doc, something like that, and will help you deliver that conversation far more effectively. If you're a fan of books, these 4 books, I've read dozens, maybe over 100 now. These 4 books are what I'd recommend that will get you most of the knowledge you need to be an effective manager. There's lots of diversity here as well in terms of one of them is written by a submarine commander, one of them is written by the founder of Pixar. If you work in digital PR creative, just read that book. It's great. It's really relevant to what we do day in, day out in creative, but also really good for being an effective manager as well. Solante's newsletters, one was mine, but this one's the MGMT Playbook by a guy called Dave Klein. It's a weekly newsletter that really gets into the details of how to be an effective team leader. If TikTok's more your thing, I'm trying with TikTok, I really am. But if it's more your thing, it's scrolling all the time, just it makes me hurt a little bit. But there's some good people on TikTok. There's Vince Anderson, Lawrence Bierman. Between the two of them, they cover some really, really cool topics around how to be effective managers and how to build an effective team or workplace as well. So if TikTok's more your thing, go and follow these two. Experiential knowledge, just to finish up on this one. So as I mentioned earlier, you can't really speed up experiential knowledge, but you can cut down the learning curve quite a bit. And here's a few ways you can do that. Seek exposure in your day-to-day role to challenging situations. I can say with 10 years of running an agency behind me, the people I worked with who did this were the ones that always got promoted quicker, always developed faster and became indispensable to my agency. People who did this kind of thing. If you do this in your day-to-day role and don't run away from stuff, and in fact run towards trouble, as my old boss used to put it, you will be far more likely to progress quickly within your company. And these are the kind of things you can run towards. So unhappy clients, difficult decisions, clients who aren't getting results, don't kind of step to one side and hope someone else is going to deal with these. If you can be the person to put your hand up and run towards them and try and deal with them and try and take ownership of them, you will progress far, far more quickly than anyone else in your team. I can pretty much guarantee you that. Cool, in terms of, let's just wrap up for the last few seconds or so. So management skills, they don't get treated with the same respect as SEO, digital PR, content, that kind of stuff, but we really should try and treat them on the same level. Deliberately build that factual knowledge and experiential knowledge. They're both equally important. You can build one or the other to be good at what you do. You want to be great, try and build both and be very, very deliberate about seeking out experience and seeking out factual knowledge. What you got here won't get you there. Just because you're the best SEO, digital PR, content marketer in the world, it doesn't mean you're going to be the best manager in the world. Those sets of skills are very different. You have to understand and realise that. If you want to download everything I've just shared with you, I'm going to step over here a second. There's a QR code here, or you can go to the newleader.digital/BrightonSEO. If you don't capture it, I'm around here at the end. I can grab it off my phone as well. But that will give you all the checklists, templates, processes that I've just shared with you as well. And I can see a few people with their phone flips. I'm going to leave that for a second. But thank you for listening to all 3 of us today. Thanks for coming along. If you've got any questions, we'll be around here shortly. Thank you.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.